This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created Zapbox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Roni Abovitz for This Week in XR. It is Friday, May 24th, and our guest is Jon Vlassopulos. He is the CEO of Napster and former head of music for Roblox. So Jon has a fascinating background. He's had a lot of great jobs and has an interesting career, and he's an investor in our friends at InWorld. So we should have a great show today. So much in the news. We are without Ted, sadly. He is said he might try and call in as he's boarding a plane. I think we are skeptical. So let's just dive into the news.
Oh, if he's able to do it, it's a testament to the increasing stability of airborne network Wi-Fi. So let's see what happens.
There you go. We're going to everything technology. So it's funny because something happened this week that was the biggest item in the news, and it had nothing to do with business, billions of dollars in financing for a new tech startup. Instead, it's movie star Scarlett Johansson, still very much a movie star, and a real blunder by OpenAI, continuing to call attention to itself as not very attentive about the copyright holders.
Yeah, I wonder if this. It seems like assault on copyrights and IP is sort of a strategy. Like these are incredibly smart people. So it's just like absent-mindedness that, yeah, ownership doesn't matter. Who cares? We're gonna blow through it. The laws will change. Is it almost like how Uber was trying to like overrun like taxi badges, like
And that
some
worked.
legacy thing?
Yeah, that
Kind of,
worked.
right? It kind of worked, yeah.
I mean, they underwrote the cost of an Uber ride for whatever it was, 5 or 6 years, and destroyed the taxi business that way, and of course, then they jacked up the prices.
And Charlie, that is a model, right? You raise so much capital, like tens of billions, that you can afford all the lawsuits and the fights and the payouts, and that eventually like smaller groups that you're overrunning like feel like they can't fight you in court and settle.
Well,
And those
that's
settlements, even if it was 5 billion in settlements, the win may be hundreds of billions. So they're rolling the dice on it, which would overwrite many of the laws in the country to serve something that seems unfair.
I have another theory, because they're out there making deals with companies like News Corp and Axel Springer. Maybe they're thinking down the road before disaster strikes that they'll be able to put out a model that excludes that information because it's big enough and there are enough other publishers covering many of the same topics and have very high quality journalism. The Wall Street Journal, in particular, has a tradition of great journalism. So I think it's possible that, in the course of time, they'll just say to the New York Times, well, look, let's settle. We're no longer using your content. Sorry, here's $100 million.
But then try to overrun the New York Times by saying we have deals with
Right.
News Corp and others. So effectively, we're using our AI with those sources, and they're getting paid, and you're not, and you're going to lose. Like X already has an AI news feed aggregator, which they're saying is sort of an advantage of X, right? That it's listening to all the converse. Like if you use X, formerly Twitter, you have to agree that the XAI is reading everything you're doing. So there's inherent built-in component to it. So I'm wondering if they're looking at that saying we just have to have our own version of that.
So, and while all that's going on, a company that is not known by many people called Scale AI raises $1 billion, bringing their overall valuation to $13 billion and then some. I guess this is on a fast track to go public. It's a Series F. I think this company is less than 3 years old, so they must just have continuously raised money as they went along on almost a rolling basis.
Well, Charlie, one of the things to for the listeners to think about. I mean, I'm in an AI startup, so I'll give you obviously biased opinion, but some of the deals are it's a big number. Most of it going right back to a large computing provider. So Azure, Google, Amazon are often cutting deals because it has a revenue boost. Like I'm giving you $1 billion, and you're going to use 900 million of it
Right.
on credits to use Azure or to use Google Compute. So there's like this circular thing.
Yes.
Because why do they need so much money? Because they're trying to build a giant brain that needs tons of compute and a bunch of A100s and things
Right.
like that. So there's this really interesting back and forth that's
This is a
going.
good reason why Amazon, Microsoft, and Nvidia keep showing up in these funding rounds.
Right. So it's kind of like when you think about it, like the mix of players and the strategic, is it a revenue boost without too much losing on the part of an Nvidia and the compute because they make the money. They're getting money right away.
Yeah.
The ROI on their shares is much less important. They're actually just getting boosted revenue from all these startups. So it's this weird like
Right.
cash recycling machine. That's not true of every single one of them, but it's true of a lot.
Yeah.
And that's why the numbers are so big. But when you
Mm,
look, oh, where is it going? It's going
yeah.
right back to that big cloud provider.
Scale does something that I think is probably needed specifically by the bigger companies, which is an automated way of using AI to label the content that it's scraping up, which vastly increases its value, contextual value. Uh, Favorite topic: music. Suno. $125 million. You can text a whole song, a score to a video, uh, from a text prompt.
Yeah, Suno is an interesting company, especially in the light of groups like Sony publicly. I think they sent over 700 letters to everybody
Yeah.
saying, take our stuff out. The question is, how many other groups come in? How many other major holders of publishing rights and all of that? And how does a Suno respond to that? Like, can they extract everything that belongs to Sony Music, everything that belongs to Universal, everything that belongs to Warner Brothers, and everything that belongs to every indie? So what are you left with? Um, and do they have the money to like Spotify had to license everything from everyone, which created a massive overhead, and they finally worked through that. So is Suno trying to become that? Uh, and here's the question: if they're going to do that, why wouldn't Spotify beat them to that? Because they already have all those licenses in place and all those relationships.
Don't you think they're gonna? Isn't this the Betamax case from the '80s, where they sued? Everybody sued Sony for creating this copying device, and the Supreme Court said, unless you can prove the copying device is copying your stuff specifically at scale and it's hurting your business, it's fair use. So they put some vague limits around fair use, but it's an obvious claim, and there is Supreme Court precedent. So don't you think Suno's playing that game? Like it's going to take 15 years to get to the Supreme Court anyway, so they
I,
could go
I think
quite
you're right,
far.
Charlie. I think there's a like Napster played. That not necessarily worked out in their favor, but in the case of VHS and Betamax, like it sort of did work out in the end. This sort of ability to like personal use copy, right? But I think the difference was you can't have a gigantic VHS warehouse mass producing copies of someone else's IP and then like selling them without a right. Like you could do it at home. So the question is like how does a Suno take all the IP that it has or doesn't have? And then the question is like, how do you guarantee it's not being used? Is it only internal use for yourself, your own edification? I could see that argument, but if you're going to publish it and it's going to be out there and that music's going to be used, like
Yeah.
how do you get attribution to whose IP is embedded in there? So for our readers, our listeners, I
Hmm.
think the key thing is they're going all of it's so atomized we've ground up all the compounds into such a fine powder. No one, because everything is 1 millionth of something else. Um, but is that really true? Like, you just don't know what's inside the black box. So is this lack of attribution fair? I mean, these are the things, like, I think ultimately Supreme Court is going to have to fight over.
And it'll be interesting to see how they relate it to the previous ruling. Whether and this is a court that does not hesitate to overturn prior rulings, and precedent doesn't affect a lot of their decision making. So here's a story, Roni, that is going to be juicy. I think there's a company that will help you to create an AI of your personality. The it takes all of your experiences. There's a guy named Michael Bomber who's dying, and there's a company called Eternos. I talked to the CEO, Robert Locascio, and when he saw that Bomber was dying, he reached out to him. Locascio is a very successful entrepreneur, a very wealthy guy. And so he's bootstrapping a 12-person company to help people to capture their memories, to clone their voice, to uh, have some, in a way, personality. It could chat with you about all sorts of subjects, and it would have his personality and his point of view. So Locascio has helped Bomber over the past couple of months, because Bomber's got less than a year to live. He's helped him over the last couple of months to kind of input as much as he could. So here's the thing. I don't know that that's going to work. Apparently, Bomber is feeling very good about it and is talking about it. And I think the idea, of course, is much bigger than this particular application. Although I wish Bomber and his family well, I think I would be surprised if several years from now that AI was being used a lot. I think it may be something people think they want in the moment, but long term would be kind of strange. But on the other hand, what if you lifelogged for a year, right? You wear the AI pin, it knows what you do every day, it records all your conversations, it's with you online, it knows what you're looking at, it knows your emails, messages, uh, contact network. And so it picks up your personality that way, not by you kind of doing the AI equivalent of making tapes. Many people make tapes, right? That's the analog way to do it. You make tapes of yourself and your memories, and you hope that your descendants find it useful. Of course, all those memories on mag tape are no longer retrievable, many of them. But in this case, you could really, Elon Musk could make this giant model of Elon and send that to Mars or launch that into outer space. I think that's a really compelling idea.
Probably, can we go there for a minute? Because it's a topic that had direct interaction with that magic leap. Let me go. Let's geek out for a
Yeah,
second.
yeah. That's why I
Um,
brought it up.
I'm going to give you like good versions and bad versions, and actually things we experimented with. So I'm going to go all the way back to Ulysses S. Grant. In case you don't know who he was, go back to high school. But won the Civil War for us. Was part of key guy in Lincoln's team to basically defeat the Confederacy. If he did not do what he did, there would be still slavery in this country. Unfortunately, it would be horrible. So he's a one of those like classic American heroes that has been lost to history.
Yeah, there was a
Mark
great
Twain,
biography, by the way,
great
written about
biography
him.
of him.
Yeah, and he was a good guy who had no way to fight the bureaucracy. You want to talk about the deep state? He was not a puppet, but helpless. And his administration got hijacked in many ways. But as you said, he won the Civil War,
He was a great,
and
like a general that
yeah,
won the
he was
war.
like Eisenhower, but Eisenhower had control over the infrastructure of government, where Grant never really did.
And there was a great documentary about him where it showed a number of like really positive, like civil right and precursor civil right things. But anyway, to get back on our
Yeah,
track, there's a
yeah.
biography of him that Mark Twain helped him do in the last years of his life, last years of Ulysses Grant's life. So there's this memorializing of your philosophy and wisdom, which Grant did in his book, The Memoirs of Grant, which is like a classic in the Library of Congress. Then there's like freezing your head cryogenically, like Walt Disney kind of rumors and myths, which is like a Disney animator legend that
Yeah,
Walt's head is somewhere
yeah.
underground in the cast. So there's like somewhere between the horror of that and the importance of like memorializing your philosophy, like in Grant's memoirs, or photographs of your great grandparents in an album. This idea of capturing yourself through AI is a very weird, like actually singularity university kind of thing. Like Ray Kurzweil's like upload your body to the
Yeah.
machine, and it was all out in the West Coast is an entire like semi cult of people that want to upload into the AI so they're become immortal. So I'll give our listeners a quick thing of what we did at Magic Leap. A very, very, very famous band who I'm a huge fan of that I won't name. We worked with one of the top visual effects and animation companies in the world to create one of those members who's no longer alive. And we recreated their full appearance, the guitar, the amp, in a nearly photorealistic way, like incredibly good. Like this is working with one of the top animation groups in the world that has done stunning things in feature films, and one of the top directors in the world was participating in that. And then I was standing in front of this now person, and we had it so that they could make eye contact with you while they were playing. And there was a 5-minute segment of them doing a classic scene that everyone knows from a television show. And then it just was so eerie and weird and seemed wrong. We ended up like just shelving the whole thing. It just gave me like the bad mojo. I have no other way of describing, like it was like raising a spirit and you're like, don't do this. This seems wrong.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there's a huge line between the Ulysses Grant memoir, which seems on the right side of the line, the freezing the head cryogenically, which is also in the three body problem, just seems, oh my God, what are you doing? So somewhere there's this like mix that I don't know if we found the equilibrium, but these
you
companies playing around with it, they can end up in the dark place. The slope is so slippery, you can just go whoop really
yeah.
fast. So, and anyway, I would just enter it with caution. You can
Oh,
end up
what a
in
good
very
science
weird,
fiction
bad
movie.
things.
What a good science fiction movie this would make. I have to ask ChatGPT to help make it. Anyway, we're letting Jon Vlassopulos in from the green room, CEO of Napster, which I guess is now a Web3 project. So it'd be interesting to hear how it has morphed through the years. Jon, welcome to the show. Nice to meet you.
Good morning, guys. Happy Friday.
Yes,
Happy
it's
Friday.
Memorial Day weekend. I gather we Jon has been a friend of a friend, so it's great to meet you, as we do many of our guests who we've never met in the real. So welcome to the show. As we just sort of chat about what's going on in the world in tech at the beginning of the show. Roni and I were just talking about the guy who's trying to upload or trying to, instead of making tapes for his descendants, he's dying of cancer. He's trying to upload his personality and his memories into AI.
Yeah, no, I used to be a TV producer in a former life, Ronnie, and we had Black Mirror in the fold. So I
There you go.
think all of entertainment being ahead of experiences. I was reading, Charlie, you're asking about neuroscience and the new project, the non-invasive neuroscience connections with the tools. So yeah, no, I think entertainment often predicts the future, and then we try and catch up in the business world.
I
By
was
the way,
just
John,
saying,
oh, sorry, go on, Charlie.
no, I was just saying it could be the plot for a fantastic science fiction movie. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Charlie, I'm gonna play the Ted role for a second. Hey, Ted, he's John. He's in the air right now, flying. Um,
Uh,
but to many of our listeners, I think the idea that Napster exists in a new form is probably not something they're all aware of. So maybe tell us a little bit of history. Like a lot of people know about Napster as a historic, kind of crazy startup that busted things open, but then got blown up into bits, and then it became iTunes and Spotify and all that. But the fact that there is a Napster and you're alive and kicking, maybe explain to everyone what's happening, how did it happen, and all of that.
Sure. So I think a good music quote, don't call it a comeback, we've been here for years. Right. So the quick history, and I have so I started in the music business in the in the 90s, there was a DJ and a radio guy, and ended up at BMG, a record label in Asia, and then ended up in New York working for Bertelsmann, the parent. And we actually, so I invested in the original Napster back in the day. So it's weirdly full circle for me now wearing the T-shirt again. T-shirt quality has got a lot better, I think, in the last 20 years.
Are we
Um,
eligible for shirts? Like,
Absolutely.
okay.
Then
Because
Courtney
I would
here.
totally wear that. That's super cool and vintagey, awesome at this point, and future retro. I
Nice.
don't know what you want to call it. It's great.
I will.
I
I
see.
will email you our addresses.
I know. Please do, and preferred shirt sizes. So no, I just got back
Yep.
from New York. We had a board meeting, and I always wear it when I travel. And I had the TSA guys going, "Napster, man, that's fucking awesome!" Like, and like, high fiving. So the brand love is there. So yeah, so we put in about 60 million back in the day in a small deal team. We worked on a Napster 2.0 that the world never really saw, and that insight was, if you remember, the old Napster had community before it got cleaved off and became social media. And we met an investor recently who met his wife on Napster, right? So that was part of the core experience. It was decentralized, and the new version of the platform, the vision that we had for digital music and digital media was less of a sort of controlled, centralized service, and more of an open platform where curation was much more prevalent. So if you got your favorite music from the DJ or the radio station or that club or festival, or in the old days we called them tastemakers, now influencers, or celebrity, they would all have their home labels, etc. on the platform. It was going to be a 9.99 model, and we were gonna cut in our curators as part of that economic model, in addition to the community that was hosting the platform. There was going to be integrated commerce, a la carte, digital experiences. And then we bought the Columbia House business with the BMG clubs, if you remember, the 10 CDs for a penny. And there was going to be a physical component to the club as well. So really, weirdly, what we're presenting now is not a million miles away from what we were presenting 25 years ago. It's just the industry kind of went backwards. So we were nearly there. We offered $1 billion offer to the music industry to jump on board, 200 million for 5 years. My boss was a German guy who come from AOL, and he came in a little hot and heavy with the music industry. And as you guys know, that's often a challenging approach. And '99 was the biggest year of the industry to date. And Bertelsmann was trying to kind of go out on its own versus work in lockstep with the industry. So long story short, we didn't get it over the line in the end, but it was very, very close. So that always stayed with me, going what the world could have been like, if we'd continued down that path. So the assets, after we left it, went to Roxio, then to Best Buy, and eventually got picked up by Rob at Real Networks. So he'd launched Rhapsody, the first ever streaming service, in 2001, and eventually then rebranded Rhapsody as Napster in 2016. So we're Napster by name, but the underlying tech is the original streaming service pre-Spotify. So that ran independently till 2020, and then was taken public by Melody VR. Charlie, good XR VR. Maybe you covered them over the years. So that was public for a couple of years, and then our investors took it private 2 years ago, and they were a consortium, as you guys were saying, of sort of DeFi and TradFi guys. So it's had a long history, but has never stopped being active. But it sort of transitioned from that rebellious peer-to-peer beginnings to that first legitimate DSP. So we now exist as a smaller competitor to Spotify.
With a slightly different business plan and a slightly different way that artists get compensated.
Currently, Charlie, no, right now. So a lot of plans we've been sharing publicly. We're really looking to tap this next era of the business around a lot of the stuff I was doing at Roblox. So that's a super fan artist fan connection, and unlocking that creatively and commercially. So I can talk about that. But immediately, if you go to Napster now, we're comparable to Spotify and Apple and Google, similar catalog, similar features and functionality, just smaller.
John, how do you like, in terms of the brand? It has this like slightly punk kind of crazy-ish early brand. Are you trying to maintain that, like the edge of early Napster, almost like they were kind of pirates, and are you trying to make it different? Like when you think about like the role in the music space, like iTunes covers a certain mental space, Spotify covers another. Is Napster trying to be the dark, edgy, comeback kid, or how do you position it?
No, I like all those metaphors and analogies. So yeah, we'll talk about Star Wars, a bunch internally with the Rebel Alliance against the Death Star. So we're definitely the Federation, and I think you haven't seen us come back yet. So we're in the middle of finishing up a growth round right now, and then it's our 25th anniversary in 2025. So expect to see that new drop of something that looks materially different to the current streaming services in 2025, and that will be definitely leaning into the rebellious angle of the past and having a lot of fun with the brand. So.
Yeah, just riffing out loud for a second. I have a recording studio. This is my virtual place, but right behind my actual where I'm sitting, there's like a full blown recording studio, like 32 channel board and tons of guitars, and I'm just super geeked out in it. But I always thought of there's a lot of like Web3 musicians and indie musicians and people that just have no place in iTunes or Spotify anymore. And the founder of Spotify is a friend, but if you're not a big, heavy hitting artist with a major important label, it's just so hard to be in the top 1,000 because the service is all designed algorithmically to support Drake. 2 billion views were Drake, 80 billion views Taylor Swift. If you're like a cool punk band in Minnesota, that's going to be the replacements. Like you're just going to die over there, and it's very difficult to find your way forward. I'm
Yep.
wondering, is Napster like where all those others, like the garagey college radio, weird underground, and the edgy stuff and discovery, and I don't know, like, how do you? I'm imposing things that seem to have gotten lost since Napster, but is that kind of where you're headed, or?
I think, Ronnie, we need to have side chats. Your
Yeah,
thinking is much aligned. So yeah, look, I went away from the music business. I worked in telco for AT&T and then Endemol Television, and then ran an ad agency, and then kind of Roblox gaming and investing. So I've been out of the business, and then when I came back to it at Roblox, I was like, all right, it's been 20 years since I'm out. I presume there's huge changes in the DSP space. And it was like, oh no, still 9.99, predominantly the same features. Like, what's everyone been doing for 20 years? So I think yeah, we definitely feel, Ronnie, that the business is ready for a makeover. So we see three key pillars or legs of the stool for a successful consumer platform. One of those is obviously the content, which is where DSPs are now. It's X amount of tracks. In our case, 170 million for Y dollars a month. Not very exciting. Single player mode consumption. So what we were doing at Roblox, we had community. So we think is the other leg of the stool. At Roblox, a lot of the activations we did were around events and people coming together and meet and greets and concerts and digital goods and digital experiences. So that was very popular, and we generated 100 million plus of net new revenue for the industry. And then the third is sort of around that, sort of the creator economy. So allowing digital goods, subscription, kind of creator engagement. Think of Patreon. So the short maybe TLDR or tagline would be sort of Instagram meets Patreon meets Spotify, but instead of having those disparate experiences, we feel they all sit nicely in one stack. So yeah, and the theme through that, I started again as a DJ, as I mentioned, is that curation and the human aspect of music has really been lost. It's so integral. If anyone's been to a festival or a live show, being shoulder to shoulder. I was watching live, Royal Blood, one of my favorite rock bands from the UK in Nashville, where I live, last week, and that's 2,000 people bouncing around. It's a two-piece, just making lots of noise, and the digital experience of that is almost orthogonal. It's like so far away from that. So yeah, so we want to bring back the voice. We love some aspects of AI, but feeling some of the larger platforms, not naming names, are going deeper into being sort of dehuman and wanting to have everything algorithmically discovered and all about kind of monoculture. We
Well,
believe very much.
they do playlists, right? That's their approach to it.
Yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with playlists. I think 70. The report recently, Charlie, was that 70+% of anything that's discovered is all Spotify. If we're naming names, so we want to flip that on its head and kind of get back to curators. So we want to empower, again, DJs, festivals, venues, magazines are dying. All these great curators, influencers, independent labels, all of these guys to come back and be the ways that we connect around that community and help those communities monetize.
So John,
There's Ted.
Ted is here in
It is
flight.
business class seat.
Oh my God! Whoa, are you rolling? There we go.
Ted is sneaking this in. They don't yet know he's doing the podcast.
That's true.
The last pod I looked at, you were doing yak, and I think you had a beer in the mountains or something. So you're always on the move.
That's great. We have Ted. John, quick question. Do you see yourself becoming like an AI free zone?
Ted, you should
like
mute
there's the
while they're
vinyl
talking in the background.
There's like vinyl record purists who are like, no digital, and like I don't know if that makes sense, but like, a lot of music and music services will be heavy AI or fully AI created. It's coming in a massive wave. Are you gonna embrace it partially or fully, or like hell no, no AI is allowed? Like how do you see that? We were just talking about AI music just before you popped on.
So I think in terms of enabling, human connection and curation, we like that aspect of AI. So we actually beat the big boys to the punch with AI generated playlists beginning of the year. So at the end of last year, because we're a small, nimble team, I was futzing around with GPT or whatever and punched in, give me an old school, house playlist to listen to by the pool or whatever, and it spat out a bunch of tracks that are completely useless because there's no copy paste right into a service we can listen to it. So I said, well, why don't we kind of complete that? We were stuck at one side of the river. Why can't we build that little bridge to let people listen? So we did a little skunkworks project, called it Playlist GPT, and ended up launching that at the top of the year. And that allowed people to go in and do the prompt. Then it hit our database to go and pull the tracks. We used DALL-E for AI generated image and GPT for the kind of descriptor. And it was pretty cool. So it was kind of a fun thing. We got out there, Spotify then followed us, and Amazon followed them, and it's now in the product. So that aspect of AI helping people feel more creative. So that Instagram moment where it's like, my photo really actually is good, even though it's the 90 millionth one of the Eiffel Tower. Sometimes you have your spin on it. So that aspect we think is good. But other than that, we definitely want to lean into the human aspect of music and human connection, and empowering that punk band from Milwaukee or whatever to reach their fans directly, and give them the tools to do that. And I think additionally, there's amazing record labels that are out there, and they're really groups of people who have great taste. So if I can connect with the people who also love that, whether it's Delicious Vinyl or XL or Fitz Dance Labels, if I want to connect with those people, I think that's an interesting aspect as well that's never really been revealed.
Can I see one more crazy question? And then I know probably Ted needs to jump in because he managed to punch in from the airplane. But John, do you see doing like Napster artists, like you sign bands, whatever, into Napster and they're exclusive, where you have like a kind of label-ish aspect to it, where whether you're a Web3 musician or like you would have in the past been signed to a Sub Pop or something, is that part of what you're doing, or it's more of like deal with the labels, not the artists?
No, I think we definitely love the artist direct, and that was again a lot of what I did at Roblox. You got to play somewhat A&R in terms of picking the programming, and a lot of the deals that we did, the artists got all the money. Maybe it ran through the labels, but again, it's about that curator. So Partisan, again, talking about indie label, everything they put out, I love Fontaine's, Blonde Shell. So it's phenomenal, and I want to connect with other people from who are into that label, who are at the label. And then for an artist directly, like we did this cool little metaverse extension, Charlie, earlier in the week. I think Courtney sent it over with Rick Wilson. So we're leaning in and giving him a virtual space on the platform to him to connect with his fans, drop his records, sell merch. So that's kind of leaning in, and that you can kind of imagine that maybe we go deeper, to giving artists a way to connect directly and maybe helping out in the ones that we think have promise. So I would say, Ronnie, everything's on the table at the moment. We just want to. It's honestly, music right now is a little. It's antisocial, which is what I used to say at Roblox. Music is inherently social, and we had an era which a lot of the kids forget before streaming, which was digital goods. I did a lot of ringtones and wallpapers at AT&T. We had downloads. So that the notion of bringing back um, digital goods as a way to connect on top of streaming, directly with artists, digital experiences gated is all, kind of the past is repeating itself. So we want to, again, get out the way and allow artists and fans and curators to directly connect with each other and kind of be a part of that experience. Partly the metaphor is Roblox. We were a platform of many brands, and we had creator tools to empower that monetization, the creative output, and that empowered millions and millions of creators to monetize and create these amazing experiences. So much more of a platform approach and less a kind of gated service.
No, no worries. So my quick question, while I can still ask it, is where do you fall on the overall ethical lines of all of these creative industries diving into AI? Obviously, there's some controversy right now with Scarjo Johansson and some things going on. Where do you fit into that puzzle?
And I think props to Ted. I've never done a ton of pod with a question from a plane. That's that brownie point. So, in fact, if it even is Ted, maybe it's AI Ted. And I don't know. So look, yeah, I think the Scarjo thing was overstepping, and I think that's more business practice than it is ethical AI. I think it's just how you do business. In general, I think the music industry, Ronnie, if you have your studio, if I tell you I want a track that's like a little bit, Hendrix, a little bit Drake, a little bit blah blah blah, you could probably knock out a track reasonably close, right? So I think that the notion that we need more music, and the current library, we have 170 million tracks, many of them are never played. So I think the notion of AI to create more music, there's already music for television and film that's very organized. I don't think is the play. I think enabling fans to get closer to the music that they love, or maybe doing versions of them, with the authority and kind of working in tandem with the IP owners. I think that's interesting. I did a remix app about 13 years ago called Rompler, ROMPLR. We got to #1 on the App Store, and that was allowing people to do what we called mix kits. They could do remixes of Rihanna and Kanye, and that was super popular, and it was gamified. That's fun, but I think the notion that AI, I'm going to do make me a song that's part Elvis and part blah, 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 I think it's a novelty, but you still need to get that song or artist to be popular, to be played, which kind of goes back to the game that you guys were talking about at the beginning with the big ones kind of take the lion's prize. So you still need to have that kind of discovery aspect versus just banging out another song.
Jon,
I don't know if Ted, if that answered your question, but
I'm not sure Ted is allowed to ask another question. He's nodding and giving thumbs up. Yeah, he can't attract attention to himself.
And he's got a Starbucks promo little thing sticking in his video there, like little Starbucks cup. There you go.
Oh, and they've got
a
their
dog.
dog. Yeah, his emotional support dog. Or is it Jody's emotional support dog?
We're very informal here, Jon.
I love this. Three guys hanging out, kind of like smartless for tech, right? I like it. So, one thing, Jon, I think as we're going on, building on what we did with Rick. I know you cover the metaverse, or now as Matthew's coming out with his updated book, the metaverse and spatial audio. So, I'm also a big believer in the open metaverse. That was a lot of what I was pushing post Roblox. So I do think there's a very exciting time now where AI can dovetail with these open metaverse platforms to be really transformative for media and entertainment, advertising industry. And it's not necessarily, I don't think, going to be driven by gaming. And similar to what we did at AT&T, a lot of the companies that kind of blew up mobile 1.0 when we were transitioning was obviously the brands with mobile marketing and entertainment adopting it. So I think there's a secret trend which isn't being talked about as much, because Zuck killed with his Meta and then up and like Sugar Crash. But I think that theme of the open metaverse is still very real, and companies like Infinite Reality, they're about to maybe they've got ambitions to go public. Just bought the Drone Racing League, doing really cool things, kind of with advertisers and brands. Vatem, TerraZero. So there's a bunch of companies I think active in that space. And that's another one to watch out on. I don't know what you guys think.
I mean, I'll jump in on that quick. I think open metaverse. The metaverse is however it wants to be rebranded and renamed. Clearly, Roblox is demonstrating an early version of it. So is Epic. There's a company I know well in LA called Genies, which is working on interoperable elements for the metaverse. There's tons of crypto companies. Apple drops what is probably a 40 to 50 billion dollar series of investments to get the Vision Pro out there, not for a one-off, but because they see the internet and computing changing. Meta's probably spent 80 billion. Despite everyone thinking they've moved away, they're not moved away. Reality Labs is still 10, 15 billion a year easily. So
Yeah.
I think this movement is not simple towards that new web. And I guess, do you think Napster fits in that new model of that new web? It came out of the early generation of what became the current web. Do you see reinventing it yet again when the web, let's say it'll take 5 or 10 more years until like it becomes obvious the web is fully changed? Are you thinking about that too?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's I think through my career, I like being not the bleeding, but close to, in terms of pushing new change for industries, interactive television, mobile, web, etc. So, I think my nuance running, thinking about it in terms of open, is where it moves from politely. Some of those platforms are more like the AOL era of the internet, right? It was the walled garden, and I think moving to that Google era where it's accessible from the browser. There's no download client. It doesn't involve crypto ownership, etc. It's really just the immersive 3D internet. So I think that thematically is very exciting. And a lot of the numbers that these companies are putting out in terms of early tests, you've got 300% increase in time spent, 200% increase in set. It's just more fun. And I'm in the market right now for a car. I have a major birthday coming in a month or so. So and the experience is terrible, right? I go to Carfax and Car Gurus, and it's like 1999. So I think the notion of having an immersive experience for a car showroom and being able to drive the car and change the colors and talk to an AI agent who's probably smarter than the people I get on the phone or through email. I think it's so natural and inevitable. So I think it doesn't need to be. I definitely don't. The challenge we had at Roblox was trying to force all these experiences to be game-like, right? Which for a lot of brands was awkward. But I think doing what brands do best, which is sort of engaging experiences, maybe rewarded experiences. But if you can track everyone who comes in your shop, and you can guarantee that every representative you have in your store is actually pretty smart and knowledgeable, which is not the same in physical retail. I think it's massive. And you got Disney's move, obviously with Epic, with the guy who may be the future CEO, kind of double. And seeing that interplay between the physical parks maybe and the virtual. So I think the bleeding of the physical and the virtual with just this sort of immersive social 3D internet. I'm
Wait,
very
wait, wait!
excited.
You just said something very. Do you think Tim Sweeney could be the future CEO of Disney? Was that where we were
The other way
implying?
around. The other way around. The guy who currently runs the parks for Disney, I think, might be the
Oh,
the new
okay, got
Yep.
it,
CEO.
got it.
Yeah. I was at the Disney Accelerator demo day yesterday, um, and several of our former guests were featured, including Status Pro. Because they've been working with ESPN. That's the fellows that do the NFL simulation game on the Quest, which
Yep.
is a lot of fun. So Disney Accelerator Day, always fun to go back on the lot. I used to work at Disney decades
Oh, no.
ago, and it's sort of. And you know who I saw, by the way, John Snoddy, who was the head of XR at Disney Imagineering, was there for demo day, and like uh, Sam Altman, he had a guest pass. So he was a very big mocker at Disney for decades, and there he
I
was
know
with his
John. He's
guest.
great. Yeah,
Yeah, he was. Well, he's been on the show.
yeah, he's great.
So, John,
Uh,
we're running low on time, but I did not want to neglect, and we keep touching on your experience at Roblox. How long were you there?
I was there about three years, the pre-IPO to post-IPO.
So that was a time of a lot of change at Roblox, because my sense is that's around the time that they started to get brands in there, and during the pandemic, people started to really take it seriously as a commerce platform, and also, of course, Roblox was one of the first to enable users to make a real business out of building games.
That's right. Yeah. So I think coming in, there was interest on the platform to kind of, as we called it, age up, to get to an older demo. Music was great for that. International expansion, also music very good, and kind of showing that Roblox wasn't just for games. So we went pretty heavy in music. The big original drop was the Lil Nas X concert, 40 million people, and he's probably made 20, 25 million off that experience. So we sort of showed immediately how interactive experiences could be done at scale. They could unlock new creative opportunities and commercial opportunities at scale. So we then productized a lot of those experiences with more kind of major virtual concerts, launch parties, and then listening parties, digital goods, and that's then continued. So yeah, no, I think it certainly wasn't easy, Charlie. It was definitely a story over a beer, because trying to do anything new at a platform, there's concerns that maybe it'll break the platform, and you're not sure how it goes. But once we got it landed, I think it really got a nice culture. We talked a lot about like what other sectors would have their little Nas X moment to kind of bring it to the mainstream. But I think I was interested in buying SoundCloud when I was there to kind of complete those three legs of the stool. So now
That would be great, by the way, if you can get them. That would be awesome.
Well, now I think we're competitive, respectfully competitive with SoundCloud. I think who's going to capture that next platform opportunity? We feel it needs to be someone that has the streaming rights or is very active in ticketing. One of the two use cases for fans. There are very few of us in either of those lanes. If not, you're DOA. So we're out raising around. We're sort of raising our hand to be that next platform, bringing those teams together. I think Eli's doing a great job at SoundCloud, so that they're obviously a little bigger in terms of the cost to participate. So anyway, but hopefully what we're focused on, if we don't get there first, someone else gets there first, is that just overall it's going to be better for those artists, curators. We feel curation has been under monetized and not recognized at all, so we want to start cutting curators in to the economics. Think of all that energy that's been spent over the years making great playlists that certain platforms don't respect at all. So we think those can be monetized and bringing again people back and making music human again. So
John, there's Ted is texting us questions because he can't really speak live on the plane. I'm just going to read them out loud to you. Answer what you will. Two questions from Ted from the airplane audience. One was, would it be fun for Napster to launch a music LBE, like a music experience, location-based, digital, or virtual, or both? And then the other one was, is there one secret you can share about the future of Roblox? So those are the two from Ted. You could see him smiling. I tried to be Ted, accurate representations of the questions. There we go.
Very good. So the first one, I think that the teaser for the virtual experience, Ted, that we did with Rick Wilson, so that's a virtual experience where you can hang out. It's accessible in the browser. There's no download, and he can listen to all his music. There's integrated commerce. So imagine that experience for every artist, where they can come on and have their own little virtual hangout. Ronnie, Charlie, you can kind of go in also as users, and imagine there's sort of a Napsterverse experience. So not saying that's exactly coming, but not saying it's not. So that type of experience, because at Roblox we were limited with the age demo and platform. So think of an updated, modern version of immersive music experiences, but the key being you also have access to the music, right, which a lot of the platforms don't. In terms of one secret for the future of Roblox, I'm a shareholder, so I have no inside. I've left the company. I have no inside, intel. I think the real challenge for an opportunity for Roblox is to capture, I think in 2024, the advertising opportunity. You've got hundreds of millions of kids on the platform. I think it's dramatically under monetized in terms of advertising potential. And then if you think of that advertising potential, I think there's a huge additional opportunity for brand creation. So where it seems maybe abstract, but where digital brands could launch, or virtual brands launch first party on platforms like Roblox, and then kind of continue to have a physical opportunity. So I think it's a fantastic way to test, with your entertainment background, Ted, like formats, right, on the platform, video formats, TV formats, brand concepts, and then use that community to kind of test drive it and dog food it and then spin them out physically. So I think advertising to unlock and capture, and then that sort of connection to the physical world, both digital to physical, physical to digital, and vice versa. So those would be that's a bonus. I gave more than one.
So that's all the time we have. Jon, it was a pleasure meeting you. Great having you on the show. As always, I feel like we could have gone on for another hour. So Ted's taken off, and so are me and Roni. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we hope to see you again in the reel.
Sounds good. Cheers, guys, and we'll get those T-shirts in the mail. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you, Jon.